Alrighty, those are the credits. Let's just turn down that volume a bunch. All right, I'm gonna give my thoughts on this game, and I'm just gonna get this out of the way right now because I'm gonna say some really negative things about this game, and just be prepared. I'm gonna go ahead and get the biggest thing out of the way and just say I don't like this game, and I'm gonna arguably say that this game might actually be on the spectrum of not a good game. And that's kind of crazy for me to say that this is not a good game. I think that there are some extremely glaring flaws with a lot of this game, and it's really difficult to look past them for the other aspects, because none of the other aspects actually step up to carry that weight. As a matter of fact, they're all almost, if not equally, weak compared to everything else that runs parallel with it. Not even right. I thought I wrote down something for the story here, but I don't even have too much written down. But well, I actually wasn't even thinking that I would beat the game today. Remember, I thought it was going to be a 27 hour game, and I beat it in 18 hours, 19 hours. So way ahead of schedule. But what was the story? Aside from the whole evil plot, the story is basically Sora loses his home, his world, and in turn loses Riku and Kairi. And so he's basically just going world to world looking for them. And that is basically the story. Now there's I don't want to say it's a side story, but it's like a parallel story, a tangential story that runs alongside it. It's basically the bad guys are trying to get the 7 princesses to open the door of darkness to reach Kingdom Hearts. And it turns out that the guy that's been researching the Heartless for many years and wrote tons of research papers was actually the guy that was behind all of this the whole time. So, yeah, the story there, it's kind of non-existent, to be honest. It's not. There's, I mean, Sora looking for his friends is a story in of itself, and there is bits and pieces of what make a story function within it, but there's really no character arcs. There's no there's not much of anything for Sora and his story alone. Who is it? Riku and Kairi kind of get a lot more spotlight in terms of character development than Sora does at all. It's super strange. I don't like the story. Was it satisfying? I guess. I mean, if you take the route that the enemy plot and Sora's plot are actually the plot of the game, it's actually kind of a satisfying thing, you know? Like, you're off to do your own thing, and then you kind of, while you're doing that, you kind of just trickle into the enemy plot here and there, and you're just like, oh, well, since now we're all converging on the same point, I'm going to stop you. And because you have my friend, I'm going to stop you, you know? So yeah. It's only satisfying in that regard. How was the pacing? The pacing was fine. like, I don't recall anything that was actually getting in the way, or anything that was really slowing me down. I think the game did a pretty good job of, you know, like, here, go to this world. Oh, you're done with that world? Go to this world. So that was nice. And then, did I like the story? Not really. I have a note here that says the individual stories in the opening portions of the world were very underwhelming. What I mean by opening portions of the world were those worlds in general, because I actually thought we would have to go back to those worlds and maybe do some more stuff there, story-wise, and that just wasn't the case. Every single story or narrative arc or whatever you want to call it in each one of those individual worlds was extremely poor. It wasn't written well. It wasn't voice acted well. It was just there was a lot of things wrong with it, and it's kind of a shame. Moving on to gameplay, mechanics, and design. I don't really have too many gameplay things that stand out on the good side. The basic main thing that I have here is save points, full heal, HP, and MP, and I think that's amazing. That is something that I really wish more games would implement, and I wish games would implement more things. This game doesn't really have a like a autosave feature. Well, I guess it does, because yeah, so it does, but it doesn't have a save anywhere feature. But the game is like really freaking old, so I'm not holding that against it. Combat does not stand out to me. I'll probably get to that a little bit later. I don't have anything on the favorite side. I like the Colosseum battles. I thought those were really quick paced and very enjoyable. Some annoying dungeons and things like that. The Tarzan place and Atlantica were awful. I'm really glad that I never have to go to those places ever again. Some cardinal sins. I never got a really good opportunity to actually dive into what cardinal sins afflict this game, but they removed my party members a couple of times, and in that final battle, that was extremely obnoxious. So I'm probably gonna cardinal sin that. And I'm just gonna keep talking until they talk.
We've got to find Riku and King Mickey.
But, where do we start looking for that there door to the light?
Huh? Huh?
Pluto?
Hey, Pluto! Where have you been?
Huh?
Hi!
Gosh, that's the king's seal!
Hey, have you seen King Mickey? Guys, let's go.
You better catch that dog. Remember, Sora, you are the one who will open the door to the light. You already did that, man. Alright. Flopping down the volume again. Let me see. Yeah, the miscellaneous section for like the sound, music. Most of the music didn't really stand out to me. I had this discussion with Soda a little bit earlier, and like it was just kind of like ranking where we stage certain elements, and I don't know where I put music. The music in this game, Could be just my speaker setup, could be the game, I don't know. None of the music's really stood out to me except for Hollow Bastion, but I am already aware of Hollow Bastion, and it's a fantastic track. The voice acting, some rough voice acting from certain characters. I'm gonna say most characters. A lot of the villains don't have rough voice acting, but a lot of the protagonists have rough voice acting, and it's I don't know, preference thing, I guess. I generally have a pretty good tolerance for voice acting, and it wasn't something that I couldn't stand. You know, I don't think I'm ever gonna quit a game because of voice acting, but who knows? But it just stood out to me as something like, you know, like I don't know about this voice acting. It's not meeting the threshold that I would like for minimum standards for me. For the graphics, I think the kind of remastered graphics here are pretty nice. However, I mentioned this a couple times. We're gonna call them like set scenes. It's basically the cutscenes without the pre-rendered stuff, where, you know, like they're talking and you see the character models on screen and stuff like that. They do a really weird choice, and I don't know if this is like exclusive to this final mix version or if it was actually in the original or not, but in-game cutscenes swap out character models. Sometimes the texture will show the mouth movement, and other times the model will move its mouth. And it's super weird. And it happens in the same cutscene. Sometimes it will cut from like Sora, who's talking, and the texture is moving its mouth. And then it'll cut to, you know, like another character, and they're talking in the same way. Then it cuts back to Sora, and it's a whole different model that looks, you know, way nicer. And he's moving his lips and, you know, flapping his gums and showing his teeth and all this other stuff. And it's really jarring. It's a super strange choice, you know, like, can we do one or the other? Replay value, I think there was probably, I think there's a lot of stuff in this game that I didn't, encounter. So there's probably some replay value for this game. I know you could fight Sephiroth. He was in the credits. So that's pretty cool. I didn't do the last Coliseum. Kind of regret that now. Let's see. I don't have any favorites whatsoever. I'm gonna get into dislikes. All right. The camera. The camera is the most atrocious thing that I've ever had the displeasure of using. And I would say the camera probably accounts for maybe 60% of my dislike for this game. It's atrocious, and I know it's the first entry. Let me say this while I'm here. I give this game a ton of slack. It's the first entry in a series that has like 8 games or something like that. And it came out in like, what, 2002 or something? It came out early 2000s, I think. It's a really, really old game. And a lot of its mechanics and design choices are old when, you know, when you think about it today. Back in the day, they was more in line of, you know, how things ran. So it's just really difficult to play a game with these outdated mechanics, and I don't know what else I want to call them, but just the cameras, definitely the worst thing that I've ever controlled in a video game. And I have played Pilot Wings. The jumping is also really, really awkward, and it doesn't mesh well with everything else. I mentioned before that there's no animation canceling, and the jumping is a really big like negative towards that. I've died to this. Like, there's so much landing lag when you hit the floor. You could die because of that. Jumping is very dangerous, and there are several times where you don't have a choice but to jump. If you're on the ground and you're going to attack an enemy, sometimes you're going to jump and do an aerial attack, and that could very well kill you. There's no air mobility, which I think would really help in the combat for this. And I have here the combat is unrefined. Combat is extremely, we'll call it simplistic. It has some really nice nuances. Fire truck or whatever. It has some really nice nuances to it with the abilities and how you can add things onto it, but those don't play that much of a role, and arguably they're useful or they're not. I don't really want to speak to that, but it's rough, really rough. I know it's going to improve on the later games, but I definitely just have to say that the combat needed more tools. There were some, it added some really nice tools, like being able to roll. There was that slide dash attack. These are some things that I think just needed to be in the base game to begin with. And then maybe added more tools that would branch off from rolling and slide dash attack, or what have you. As it is on its own, it's very bare bones, it's very basic, and it needs a lot of polish. Cycling through the menus is very difficult in combat. This could be a me thing. I just don't know how to use a controller that well, but I have to put a lot of effort into using the menus, whether it's using an item, using magic that's not on quick cast, or summoning something. It takes a lot of we'll just call it brain power to navigate that, but also navigate the battle. And some of these combats were kind of challenging, and so going through all that, you might take a hit or two, and that could kill you. Thankfully, I put Cure on quick cast, so that drastically aided my issues with having to heal myself. But casting anything else that wasn't a quick cast was a problem. I think items needed to have a quick cast as well. And while I'm talking about items, I think items also should have automatically been grabbed out from the stock or the storage. Again, it's a really old game, and it's just a really outdated thing. And so I know I'm harping on things that are probably going to get improved on, or I mean, probably do, or I'm just going to say they do get improved on, even though I don't know that. But I mean, I'm just pointing out what's in this game, I guess. Item management is time consuming. Going into the menus and putting items on each person's little bag slots. That's ridiculous. Enough said. Core level in game design techniques. Little direction on what to do next. I ran into this on several occasions. This game doesn't hold your hand, but at the same time, it also doesn't convey to you enough what you need to do next. The Tarzan level was the biggest offender of that, and I think it's like the golden child to my issues. It's incredibly frustrating to go into a level and then you end a cutscene and there's no indicator of where you're supposed to go next or what to do next. So you just start wandering around looking for that next place to go, and you don't find it. So you look again and you still don't find it. And it starts to wear down on you. It's these types of things that, you know, like if there was no internet, you'd probably set the game down and be like, all right, you know, I'm just gonna hold off on that. It's frustrating. I had to pull out a guide several times just to figure out what I needed to do. And I shouldn't have to do that. A game should convey clearly where I need to go, and it doesn't have to be hand holding. You could just say like, "Hey, go to the treehouse." You know, I'll be like, "Okay, now I know where I need to go, and I can look for the way to get there." So, just a little bit of help here. Confusing objectives. I have this written down, but I don't remember what that's in regard to. But because I wrote it down, there are some confusing objectives in this game, and they shouldn't be confusing. They should be clear and to the point. Let me see. No tools like a mini map to relieve confusion. I don't think a mini map is absolutely necessary, but a map of the area would be very helpful, and a mini map itself would be very helpful. I know the areas are very small, and a lot of them have several levels to them where a mini map wouldn't exactly benefit. But in order to help with like the design of the game, if you're not gonna tell the player where to go, you need to give them some clues on where to go. And a mini map or a map or what have you is a good way to accomplish that. And that's everything. I'm not going to do if the developer is watching, because you already did like 7 more games after this. So, I mean, you improved on the game as far as I'm aware. So, that's it for my Kingdom Hearts 1 thoughts. This is probably the first game that I actually just don't like at all. And it's kind of tragic, because I used to like this game. But then again, you know, as a child or as a kid, as a teenager, I had a lot more tolerance for these types of design decisions. You know, I grew up with these games, you know. Super Mario doesn't tell you where to go. It's a side scroller. You go left. That's where to go. So I guess I'm spoiled on game mechanics nowadays. I think that's everything that I got. I'm gonna be moving on to another game in the Kingdom Hearts series, and that it looks like it's gonna be Chain of Memories is the next one. And I don't know if I'm gonna do that this weekend or not. Probably not. But yeah, I'll move on to that, and then after that, Kingdom Hearts 2, and then we'll see where we go from there. As a side note, I actually was going over a lot of my old, maybe not old, but a lot of my thoughts videos and other games, and I did definitely think it was kind of interesting that every game out there that I've played, I've liked to some degree, or I've let slide to some degree. Like, for example, Octopath Traveler. I didn't like that game, but it was a good game. And so there were a lot of elements that I really liked about the game. It's just my overall opinion of it was I didn't like it. Or like Lost Sphere, where I thought that game was extremely average, and probably mediocre. in the sense of, it was very baseline RPG of there was nothing special about it. But I still enjoyed playing it. It didn't feel like a waste of time. This game coincidentally did not feel like a waste of time, but I feel like it was a frustration to play and kind of a slog to get through. So there you have it. There's my thoughts. I'll stop talking. You can comment on the YouTube video, or you can tweet me or something like that, and you can yell at me about how my opinion is absolute garbage and how this game is an absolute classic and all that other good stuff. Yeah, this and that. Feel free. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I'll be back Monday. We'll say 6 o'clock p.m. PST. I might stream early, but you never know. And we're gonna open up with Chain of Memories. So have a good night. Peace.